As an American who moved abroad, here is the reason why I decided to come back to America. So I wanted to make this video because, first of all, I have a lot of people that ask this question, like, why did you come back? And I also feel like me sharing my experience is very important to give insight to those who may be considering moving abroad. So yeah. Okay, so for those of you all who do not know, last year, was it last year? No, 2024. I moved to South America. I moved to Colombia. I wasn't there long. I was there for a little under 3 months. And I decided to come back. And I'm going to tell y'all why. But before I tell y'all why I came back, I'm going to tell y'all what made me decide to make the move. Okay, so I know like moving abroad right now is very trendy. I see a lot of people doing it or thinking about doing it. And for me, I have always had a desire to live abroad. Like I remember 10 plus years ago telling my best friend, like, I want to move out the country. So this was something I always wanted to do, like before it became trendy. I've never liked this government. I've always, since a little girl, I've always like noticed how they treated black people in America. Just noticed how the government was just, BS. And I just never liked America, honestly. Never had no American pride, like none of that. So fast forward to 2024, I was in a situation where I had money saved up. I was renting my house. I was doing makeup out of my house, and my landlord evicted me like abruptly because I was quote unquote working from home. So at the time, I had about $15,000 saved up, and I had been to Colombia before, and I knew like Colombia was very inexpensive compared to America. So in my mind, I was thinking like, this 15,000 will do me just fine, and I'll be working on, getting other streams of income set up. And then by the time those streams of income are set up and producing money for me, I'll be able to live off of that. So yes, I had this plan, which granted, looking back at it, y'all, $15,000 was not enough to move abroad, honestly. And granted, it does depend on like where you're living at, because every place has a different cost of living. But for Colombia, 15,000 just was not enough for me and my needs. And granted, it does depend on like where you're living at, because every place has a different cost of living. But for Colombia, 15,000 just was not enough for me and my needs.
Let's be real for a second. There is this idea floating around right now that America is somehow the worst place to live in. That everything here is broken, that it's full of hate, racism, and all this stuff people keep repeating online. And because of that, some people genuinely believe life will be better somewhere else. But here's the thing, every once in a while, reality steps in and completely flips that idea on its head. And that's exactly what happened in this situation, because we got a story about a liberal woman who decided she had enough of the United States, packed her bags, and moved to Mexico, thinking she was escaping all the problems. In the next clip, the woman is she moves to Mexico with her family and her husband. And she believed um, we're ruining this country. The narrative, orange man bad, Trump derangement syndrome, everything is oppressive, everything is unfair, and somehow other countries have it all figured out. So she leaves thinking about thinking she's about to upgrade her life, thinking things are going to be easier, safer, maybe even more fair. But here's where it gets interesting. It didn't take years for her to figure it out. It didn't even take her that long at all. In less than a year, she's already coming back to the United States of America. And that right there tells you everything you need to know, because it's one thing to talk about how bad America is from your phone, and it's another thing to actually go live somewhere else and deal with the reality of it day to day. And what this story tells you, really shows, is something people don't like to admit, which is that the grass is not always greener on the other side. In fact, a lot of times it just looks greener from a distance. And the moment you step into it, you start noticing all things you took for granted. Things that didn't seem like a big deal when you had them suddenly become very real when you don't. And you know that saying, you don't appreciate something till it's gone. And that's what we're going to break down, because this isn't really about one person. It's about a bigger pattern, as you guys can see in this clip on the screen right now, as we're about to go to the clip in regards to the family moving to Mexico and saying that America is horrible. This wife and taking her kids and her husband with her. So we keep seeing over and over again this bigger pattern where people buy into an idea of what life is like somewhere else without actually understanding it. So without further ado, let's get into this. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and check this out.
What do I do when a lot of my family and friends are trying to convince me to not move to Mexico? Mainly my husband's family. Like, we can sit and list the long ass list of pros with like very little cons, but the cons are just thrown, and that's like the only thing they see. How we're gonna get a job, how we're gonna make money. And the thing is, my husband's family is Mexican. They've lived in Mexico, but the area that they lived in is nothing like the area we're moving to. Like, it's not even comparable. Like, how is it that Mexicans have fallen for American propaganda of Mexico? Because where we're moving is amazing. It's thriving. We're moving to Playa del Carmen, Mexico. It's like 30 minutes from Cancun. They're acting like where we're moving isn't safe or livable. We want our kids to be a majority, not a minority. I want to be a majority and not a minority. Real food, affordable healthcare, tropical beaches, jungle, not having to fear for our safety due to racism, diversity, Trump not being our president. It's affordable and we can live comfortably. Like, what about that isn't worth it? Like, I'm confused. We were finally...
Let's break this down because this is where things start to get real. You heard what she said in that clip, right? People around her asking basic questions like, how are you going to make money? How are you going to support yourself? And she kind of brushes it off like those are small concerns. But let's be honest, those are not small concerns. Those are the most important concerns, because this is exactly what I try to warn individuals about all the time. It's very easy to look at another country through vacation eyes or social media and think everything is cheaper, everything is better, everything is more relaxed. But what people don't think about is what life actually looks like when you are not visiting, when you are not just spending US dollars, when you actually have to live there day in and day out, because there's a huge difference between living off American income in another country versus trying to survive on that country's wages. And that's where reality hits hard, because, yeah, if you're getting paid in US dollars, sure, a place like Mexico can feel affordable. Your money stretches further. You can get a nicer place, eat good food, live in a decent area, and for a short period of time, it feels like you made a great decision. But the second you have to rely on a local job, everything changes. Now you're dealing with lower wages, fewer opportunities, and a completely different economic system that is not built like the United States. And that's the part people skip over. Now, on top of that, let's talk about everyday life. Not even not the Instagram version, the real version. Because if you have money, there are certain things you just cannot buy your way out of. And this is where it doesn't add up for a lot of people. Think about basic stuff we don't even question in the US. You wake up, you expect the lights to work, the lights working, the internet to be on. You expect a hot shower. You expect clean running water. You expect that if something goes wrong, there's a system in place to deal with it. Expectations, right? Now, imagine living somewhere where those things are not always guaranteed. And I'm not saying every single place is like this all the time, but it happens enough to where it becomes part of your daily life. Power outages, inconsistent internet, plumbing systems that can't handle basic use, situations where you can't even drink the tap water without risk getting sick. Not saying that I condone anyone drinking tap water. So now you are constantly buying bottled water just to get through the day. These are not luxury problems. These are basic quality of life issues. And people don't think about that until they're actually living in it. And here's another part people don't like to talk about: safety and accountability. Because in the United States, if something happens, you call the police. There's at least an expectation that something will be done. There's a system. It may not be perfect, but it exists in some places. That system is not as reliable. And that changes how you move, how you live, how you feel on a daily basis. And again, this isn't about putting down another country. This is about being honest about the differences, because what this really comes down to is expectations versus reality. People expect one thing because that's what they've been told, but when they actually experience it long term, they realize that a lot of those conveniences, the stability and the basic systems they had in the United States, were things they took for granted. And once those things are gone, you start to see the full picture. And for a lot of people, that's where the mindset starts to shift, because it's not just about how cheap something is, it's about how livable it actually is day to day. And that's the part that doesn't show up in a 30-second clip online. So let's go back, rewind a little bit. This is her with her passports leaving to Mexico. Now she's about to come back.
We were finally able to escape the United States, and we're having to move back already. Not even 2 months after. The reason being that our 4-year-old son got extremely sick the first week that we were here. He had a terrible fever, was throwing up blood, terrible diarrhea. His whole body was in terrible pain. He was screaming in pain and agony for days. Even after we took him to the doctor and they gave him different medication, he ended up having a bacterial infection in his stomach and his body. And since then, he has recovered, but he's still having really bad lingering problems. And we're starting to think that he has an autoimmune disorder. So with that, we're having to go to the States to get him the proper care. We've had to spend hundreds, thousands of dollars out of pocket that we were not planning on. So now we're going back to the United States to get our son the care that he needs, and we're having to let go of this dream of living here in Mexico.
It's unfortunate because she talks as though the son is the fault to why they had to give up this dream of living in Mexico, when in reality is your son didn't put y'all in that position in the first place. You actually put him as a parent in that position in the first place. He didn't know that the water wasn't clean and wasn't up to par, at least to the simple fact that it could be good quality. It could be bad quality and it wasn't good quality to drink. He didn't know that. He's a kid. And we all know as parents, at the end of the day, you don't live for you once you have a kid, you live for that child. Also raising them up in the way they should go, and also making sure that they're able to live on their own independently, setting them up with all the life skills put in place, but also understanding that I want my child to do better and be better than me. As the individual that continues to carry the extension of my name, also leaving them with something so they're better off when you're no longer here. So to sit there and say, oh, well, we have to go back to the States because my son needs this care and this is why we can't leave this dream. It's just so disingenuous, and it's like deflecting and shift blaming. And I'm not saying she's doing this intentionally, but it comes off that way to say, oh, well, I got to give up this dream because of my child. When the reality was, you were just speaking not too long ago, November 2025, or how you were doing what was best interest of your child, which happened to be not the best interest. So it wasn't your child fault, and your child didn't put y'all in that situation. You put your child in that situation. Let's be real here.
We're gonna get a bunch of I told you so's, probably. But there was no way that we could prevent our son getting this sick. We were not expecting these hospital bills, medication. I feel really fucking sad because we got rid of everything in the United States. We got rid of our home, our car, our jobs, and we left so much just to have to go home and restart with nothing. Pray for us. Send us good vibes, please, because we really do need it.
Now, you seen that, right? That's where things start to fall apart. Let's talk about healthcare for a second, because this is one of the biggest selling points people use when they say other countries are better, right? You hear it all the time. Healthcare is cheaper, it's free, it's more accessible. And on paper, that sounds great. I get why people buy into that, but here's what this actually looks like in real life when something serious happens. Because it's easy to praise a system when you don't actually need it. It's a whole different conversation when your kid is sick and you need consistent, reliable, high quality care. And from my perspective, that's exactly where the situation hit reality, because her son needed real medical attention, not just a quick visit, not just something minor, but ongoing care. Suddenly, that amazing system didn't look so amazing anymore. And again, the drinking water, let alone the tap water, wasn't even up to par, to the simple fact where they couldn't even brush their teeth. Obviously, if you couldn't drink it. So I mean, United States isn't perfect. There may be lead in some water. We may have to, fix the wastewater system. That's why we have plumbers and things like that at our convenience. Convenience, like I said earlier in the video. However, you can at least brush your teeth with the water if you don't condone in drinking it, which I don't condone or tell anyone to drink it if they want. You're your own individual person. And when it comes to if you want to drink tap water or not, do I condone it or am I pushing it or anything like that? No. But you get my point. At least you can brush your teeth with it. In Mexico, you can't drink none of that, and it has different type of bacteria and all health concerns associated with that water. Which led to your child to have to unfortunately deal with this. And your kids to be sick, unfortunately, both of them, or however many of them. More than one kid, I know that's what she said. So, look, the system doesn't look so amazing anymore. And what happened? She had to come back to the United States to get that care. And you have to ask yourself, why does this keep happening? Why is it that when things get serious, people end up back here in the United States? Because this isn't a one-off situation. You see this pattern over and over again. People talk about how great these systems are, but when it's time for advanced treatment, specialties, or consistent care, the limitations start to show: longer wait times, fewer resources, less access depending on where you are. And again, this isn't me saying there are no benefits at all. Of course, there are trade-offs. Some people like the lower upfront costs. Some people are okay with the system. That's fair. But what doesn't get talked about enough is the downside when you actually need high level care. And this is where it doesn't add up with the narrative people push, because the promise is you're covered, everything is taken care of, but the reality can look very different depending on your situation. Think about it in simple terms. If a system is truly better across the board, then why do people leave it when things get serious? Why not stay and use it again? And I'm not saying the US system is perfect. It's not. Healthcare here can be expensive. It can be frustrating. People deal with insurance issues all the time. That's real. But at the same time, the level of care, the access to specialists, the availability of advanced treatment, those are things that matter when it really counts. And that's the part people don't really fully think through when they're comparing systems. They're comparing the idea of one system versus the lived reality of another. And unfortunately, situations like this are where people are forced to see that difference up close. Because when it's your family, when it's your child, when it's something serious, you are not thinking about political talking points anymore. You're thinking about, where can I get the best care? Where can I get the help right now? And in this case, the answer ended up being the United States. And that says a lot more than online debate ever could. So let's be real to wrap this up. This whole situation could have been avoided from the start, because at the end of the day, nobody forced anyone to leave. This was a choice based on the idea of what people thought life would be like somewhere else. And from my perspective, this is where people need to slow down and really think things through, because it's easy to say America is terrible when you're not actually comparing it to real life alternatives. But once you do, once you actually live it, not visit it, not watch it online, but live it, that's when your perspective starts to change. And that's where what we're seeing here. Now, look, I'm not rooting against anybody. I don't want anything bad to happen to this woman or her family, especially her child. I hope everything works out and they get the care they need. But at the same time, this situation highlights something bigger that people don't like to admit, which is the United States, for all its flaws, still offer a level of stability, opportunity, and access that a lot of places simply don't. And you see that not just in stories like this, but in real world patterns. Think about it. People from all over the world, including places like Mexico, are trying to come here every single day. Not every single day, not because it's perfect, but because of the opportunities and the systems that exist here. And that doesn't mean other countries have nothing to offer. Of course they do. Visiting, experiencing different cultures, that's valuable. But building a life somewhere long term is a completely different conversation, especially if you don't have a solid plan for income stability and access to basic services. And this is where it doesn't add up for a lot of people. Because on one hand, you hear that other countries are better. But on the other hand, you see people doing everything they can to come to the United States and stay here. And that contrast matters. Now, as far as the bigger takeaway, in my view, people are free to make their own choices. If someone truly believes they'll have a better life somewhere else, they have every right to go try that. But what stories like this show is reality doesn't always match the narrative. And sometimes the only way people understand that is by experiencing it themselves the hard way. And that's just the truth. So the lesson here is simple. Don't take what you have for granted. Don't assume everything else is automatically better. And the grass is where you water it. The grass is green where you water it. And most importantly, think beyond the idea and look at the reality of how people actually live day to day, because that's what really matters. But also, it also begs the bigger question. I want to know you guys' thoughts. If individuals are so anti-American, they flee like this, but then they want to come back to America Rescue, and then they want to come on social media asking for sympathy, but then they condemned America as a whole, including American people, citizens, legal immigrants, all the individuals engulfed in America that come with America, right? Is it fair to say that they should not come back to the country? They should stay where they at and keep they big old behind where they at to continue to learn the hard way, because once you left, you should stay there? Because then, is it fair enough for the American people, let alone Americans and legal immigrants who came over here and done things the right way, and say, hey, it's easier for you to come and go as you please, but then jump on the internet because it comes off like you want sympathy and you want to run into the Victim Olympics and you want people to give you money or help you within a situation you put yourself. But what I'm asking is, should they still stay there behind where they at and they shouldn't be able to come back, keep them where they are, regardless? Or should they be able to come back within a choice after they condemned America so bad? Because the root overall conversation that I'm leading to here, or the topic that I'm basically hammering on, is we should be able to have individuals that are basically supporting their country, right? It's hard to have a country continue to be growing and thriving and founded if you have internal fighting within the country where individuals are against their own country. Or is it okay if they're against their own country? But then I'll ask the question of, does it help the foundation stay stronger when it comes to national security? Because you have so much adversaries within it internally within the country that it destroys its own self rather than staying good and upholding the true core in which it stood on to be phenomenal. Because at the end of the day, a country, let alone a region, or you get my point. A country is as strong as its citizens. So, however, with its flaws, backing and supporting the country and continue to make sure going the right way with productive conversation should always be the necessary route, and it should never be condemning it to the point where you're against it, where you leave. And when you leave, should you just stay out of it? Is my point. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Peace.